All right, it's Fred Underwood with Dream Big Sports, and welcome to Powerhouse Conversations. This podcast brings on powerful guests to have powerful discussions about how we can utilize digital transformation in our brands of our athletes. We bring on guests that are in the sports industry to discuss hot topics around growing your brand. Our guests share their expertise and their experience so that they can inspire innovation in our listeners. So today we have a special guest, Grant. We're going to have a conversation around NFTs in sports and how athletes can capitalize on that. So, Grant, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We're happy to have you. How's your day going?
It's been busy, which is always the case. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Yep. So, Grant, tell us about your business, M&G Collections, and how you got started.
Yeah, it was a pretty natural progression, to be honest. I have my day job and full-time role is as a financial advisor for people in the athlete and entertainment space. And as that role and the person that they kind of trust to help them with their assets and managing their various wealth, across basically North America, they always have opportunities that come up to them that are unique because of their fame and popularity, especially amongst startup investors and people in the venture capital and uh, private equity world. And so, over the last 2 years, as the NFT craze really took hold of the entire world, more and more of my clients were approached wanting to, get involved in the NFT space. Either it is create their own or collaborate or promote another person's project. And it happened so often, probably at the point when it was the peak, every other day. I was getting a call from one of our clients asking about the space, how they can get involved, how they can invest in the space, how they can just learn about it. And it became happening so often that a good friend of mine, Matt Santos, he's a graphic designer, very creative person, decided like that we could create a company together to essentially help out my clients not only understand the space but to capitalize off of it, right? We're going to get to it probably talking later on today about NIL and how college athletes can basically now monetize their name, image, and likeness. And as the world changes, so do the opportunities in that space, right? So for professional athletes, they're sometimes restricted depending on which league they, play in about their ability to monetize
Mm-hmm.
using jerseys and logos and that sort of thing. So it was really interesting. It was a huge learning curve for us and our clients learning about what they can and cannot do. But Matt and myself created M&G Collections, which is basically designed to help athletes and entertainers from start to finish. It's a 360-degree company. What I mean by that is whether an athlete or entertainer wants to simply learn about the space, we can provide consultancy services to them. If they want to go as far as launching their own NFT project but don't know where to start, not only can we design it from a graphical and design perspective, but also, what that looks like. Is there any utility to the NFT and how they want to go about doing it, making it unique to their individual, wants and wishes, right? There's been
Yep.
tons of athletes honestly in this space, and they've all done it a little differently. So the company was designed really just to provide a resource for athletes and entertainers to, be able to get involved and launch their own projects.
Yep. So I know we will probably have a lot of people who are not familiar with it, right? How do you break that down at its simplest form to explain to them what is an NFT?
Yeah, so it's it's actually a question that comes up a lot. They'll be very interested in the space. They'll see it all on TV. For example, it all really started when Beeple sold his NFT for like $69 million. That got all the headlines. Prior to that, the average person didn't know what an NFT was, even though that they've been around in trading for in some various forms for like nearly a decade.
Right.
If you're buying skins on Fortnite, like
Yep.
that essentially is an NFT.
Yep.
It wasn't branded that way. So, the NFT that we all know today really started getting popularized from Beeple. And what an NFT is, for people that don't know, it stands for non-fungible token. And I know that might even confuse people even more, right?
All right.
Um, but I'll break it down. Non-fungible more or less means that it's unique. So you can't really replace it with something else. For example, like a single Bitcoin is actually fungible. You can exchange one Bitcoin. If I have it, Fred, you have another Bitcoin. We
All
can
right.
exchange our Bitcoins. We have the exact same thing. A one-of-a-kind trading card or the Mona Lisa. These are non-fungible. They are very unique. There's one of them. If you have a painting and I have a painting, we can exchange them, but they will be different assets,
All right.
right? So non-fungible tokens are basically non-fungible digital items. That could be a song, a picture,
Mhm.
whatever you want. It can take various forms, right? But basically, it means that it is very unique and it's a one of one. The technology behind it uses blockchain technology, which in of itself, again, is quite complex. But the basic idea is that blockchains are just a way to store data without having to trust anyone or company or entity, with keeping things secure and accurate. It's sort of shared by the community,
All right.
stored by the community. And so an NFT um, really started as, a way for artists to monetize their work.
All right.
Unless you were a famous artist, you could go to Christie Auction's house or something like this. But if you're an average artist, it's very, very hard over the last little while to be able to monetize and make a living off of that. The
All right.
term starving artist doesn't exist for nothing,
Right.
right? And it's because of that. But then if you now have this technology where you can digitize your work, place it online, have it protected, have it secured, have a record of transactions, which is where the blockchain comes in.
Right.
It really provides you a platform that, frankly, up until a couple years ago, never existed for you,
Right.
right? So it has been a very interesting way to watch this market go from Beeple selling 90, or actually Fortnite skins, to Beeple selling it for 99 million, to, you know, athletes using it as a way to sell sort of like digital trading cards,
All
if
right.
you will,
Yep.
right? If I have a Babe Ruth trading card, it's very, very unique, very rare, which is the same of NFTs, but it's kind of hard to prove if I were to give you that card, Fred, that that is actually that card,
Right.
right? There's no transaction history. I can't verify it a certain way. Now, if I had that Babe Ruth trading card via as an NFT, so maybe I had a physical card, but I actually had the digital copy as well. With the digital copy, there's actually like a history of transactions that
Right.
you can see. And one cool thing is actually maybe someone in the past that was maybe even famous had owned that card, right? Maybe
Right.
one of the presidents had owned the card, that
Right.
actual card, and now you own it, both the physical and digital. You can combine NFTs with physical assets as well.
Yep.
But it becomes a way, for athletes, for example, just sticking with that example, to now take back ownership from like Tops and all these other card manufacturers to themselves and get directly to their consumers and fans and monetize, their basically popularity and
Yep.
themselves, right? So it's really morphed. Now people are selling homes using NFTs, where instead of you have a transaction that you are going to have to fill out paperwork, with a lawyer and a real estate agent,
Mm-hmm.
if you purchase something, there's once again that transaction history via the blockchain of who's owned the house, that it's a legitimate title and ownership to that individual property. People are selling songs this way, concert tickets. I mean, even like, Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks have discussed using NFTs as a way to sell season tickets.
Yep.
Um, and when I saw that, there's been not a lot of talk about that lately, to be honest. So I think maybe with the downturn in the NFT market, things have been put to the side. Maybe
Right.
he's working on in the background. But when I heard that Mark Cuban was working on that, I instantly thought to like, what tickets do I own? Right. And
Yep.
I have a pretty cool thing that every sporting event I've ever been to my entire life, I have the actual ticket for, going way
That's
back to when I was 3 years old. So
that's cool.
I was, believe it or not, at Wayne Gretzky's last game for the Edmonton Oilers. And I have this ticket. It's so funny to look at, from 1988 or 89, I believe. And I cherish it, right? I keep it. It's been around my whole life. I bring it along in the box. And, it would be cool if that was an NFT, right? Where then
Right.
I could essentially prove that and basically have a way to digitize this really cool experience and asset that I have, right?
Yep.
So the space has changed a lot, to be honest, Fred, and it's ever morphing all the time, right? Now it's really getting involved with, community aspects, right? So selling an NFT not as a trading card or a piece of art like we're familiar with, but selling it almost as like a membership,
Hmm.
right? Where you go ahead and you sell an NFT. It gives you access to either events or to
Right.
people or experiences. And we refer to that as kind of utility. So you
Yep.
have the picture, but does that picture or that NFT have utility behind it? Sometimes they
Right.
don't, right? Patrick Mahomes, football player, basically just, had no utility. He was selling his NFTs as a digital art. That's when it was really at its craze, and these guys were making millions of dollars just selling basically a JPEG, right?
Right.
And there was no utility, but the consumers didn't really know much about it, and neither did the people creating it, right? And
Right.
so when we created our company, it wasn't at the beginning of this cycle. It was sort of it was at the beginning, but towards the middle, where we started to learn a lot from the mistakes of other athletes, other entertainers, other musicians. And we wanted to create not only really cool NFTs as far as digital creations go, but also in regards to the utility,
Right.
right? So, for example, one of our clients, Brandon Banks, became the first ever CFL player to launch an NFT. He didn't do it as a way to monetize his name and likeness, though. He did it as a way to raise money for charity. So he
Hmm.
played off of the fact that it was the first CFL player that had ever launched an NFT, and he had been supporting a local charity for his time while he played at the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And he wanted to use this opportunity with this emerging technology to basically double down and connect with one of his fans. There was a meet and greet. So basically, the package was all of the proceeds of the NFT sale were going to this local charity, but
Hmm.
there was utility. It wasn't just a digital trading card. You got tickets to a game for you and a friend. You got to come down to the field after the game, meet and
Hmm.
greet with Brandon. There, you got signed jersey. There was a lot of really cool utility components to the NFT. And it's just an example of, what we've done at our company to work with these guys to not only educate them, like, yes, there's a way to monetize, your fame, but you don't want to be that guy that sells an NFT for 50,000 and then flies
Right.
off into the wind and the buyers of that NFT feel burnt, right?
Right.
That's not helping anyone. If you want to do another NFT in the future, that's not going to help, build the community and trust with people in this space, right? So
Yep.
really, it's morphed a lot about how people are using it, and it's just interesting to continue to learn how this is developing.
No, I think that's a key point when you talk about those two key words, utility and community. And I think that when early on when that's what got people a lot really skeptical is that people were dropping these NFTs and like you just said they're just selling a JPEG. But then that's where people were like, oh well, NFTs are a scam or this is this
Yep.
is they can't trust it, right? But when you do actually put some utility behind it and you build a community, that's where the opportunity comes in at, and that's what leads me to the from the for NCAA athletes and name, image, likeness. Like that's pretty much what you were talking about when you use the sports aspect of it. Is hey, how can I leverage my name, my image, and my likeness? To be able to either monetize or, like you said, you do a bunch of different cool things to help out your community.
Yeah, a great example of how specifically someone in college can benefit from this. How about, maybe a local cause as well as connect with some of their fans. A great example is, back when there was this height the NFT craze last year, Luca Garza was the NCAA Consensus Player of the Year.
Hmm.
And was in talks to be one of the number one picks in the NBA draft. He sold his NFTs via auction style. So he basically, just like you would any other, auction, right, where a lot of guys go when they sell experiences like a date night with some famous actor, right?
Hmm.
There are people that will pay for dinner with Warren Buffett, right?
Right.
This happens all the time. So Luca kind of did something similar where he held his NFT instead of setting a price, he was auctioned to the highest bidder. The NFT ended up going for over $40,000, so they were able to raise a lot of money, and that was donated to a local children's hospital.
Mm.
And the cool thing was is that some of the or the purchaser of that NFT actually got some one-on-one time with Luca.
Hmm.
Got to play with him, go out, watch a movie, that sort of stuff. So you can really tailor an NFT offering to like the person, right?
Right.
He
Right.
he was interested in movies and art and all of that, so his utility played into those strengths. So it gives
Right.
the fan a way to really get intimate with someone that they follow.
Yep.
It allowed him to raise money for a great cause. And it was an example of, how a college athlete, he didn't, obviously use it to make money, but this
Hmm.
is a great example of how others can,
Yep.
right? Now
Yep.
they might not make 40,000, but for someone on a rowing scholarship or, on one of these other sports where that they're not going to have the ability with NIL to generate those tens or
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, they have to really turn over every rock and look
Yep.
at every single opportunity to
Yep.
monetize with this floodgate that has opened. And frankly, it is a floodgate.
Yep.
You look at the dollars that have went into NIL since this started. It
Yep.
is astronomical to look
Yep.
at this, right? So you would be foolish to at least not learn about
Yep.
the space. It doesn't mean you need to do it, but it is another tool in your tool belt. It's not the be and end all, but it is one of the things you can look at, how to monetize yourself.
No, like you said, like their floodgate really opened in it, and now it's like, okay, well, how can I utilize this space and utilize this opportunity for the forgotten athletes that aren't, they aren't the Bryce Youngs or the, the Bronny James or the, whatever those other athletes are. How can the, some of the smaller schools and some of the minorities programs, how can they utilize the space? And this in NFTs is one of the ways that they can, you're able to you're not looking for someone else to give you some money. You're able to create that opportunity on your own, and that could be through your local your local shops or community, or it may be your people back home that want to support you and buy your project and support your project. So there's a lot of different ways that they can utilize NFTs to monetize their name, image, and likeness.
I think you brought up a good point with, people that are from other countries. I think of Olympic athletes where, traditionally, depending on the country that they're from, struggle for funding, right? You could be one of the best people in your individual sport, but financially, it's very difficult, right? And as a financial advisor, we talk with clients, not only the guys that make 30, 40 million in the NBA, but also those guys that play rugby, the guys that play lacrosse, and everything in between, and you really start to understand, like, especially when you get into some of the lower tiered sports, how much of a struggle it is for individuals there, right? So if you are a track and field star, from a certain part of Africa, for example, and you are training and you want to raise money to be able to help your training and get funding for your training, it is a great way to leverage your community, your country, to support you, to raise funds, to connect with your fans in a really unique way. And I think the utility aspect shouldn't be overplayed. Like, I give example of Luca, doing the movies and that with one of his fans. Another great example would be like, and this is the top of the pyramid, but Floyd Mayweather launched a series of NFTs. And forget about the digital trading card for a second. His utilities that were combined with his project were amazing. And them by themselves at a silent auction somewhere would garner tens and hundreds of thousands. Like to have a night out for you and three friends to go and party with Floyd Mayweather, or to get a private boxing lesson
Right.
with Floyd Mayweather, or to get signed gloves and do a dinner and a meet and greet with him and his whole, team. Just that alone is worth money, right? So if you're spending 40 grand on that package that includes all of that, you're almost buying it for the package, and the
Right.
NFT is just a medium in order to get the package, right?
Yep.
Um, that's from the purchaser's point of view. From the sellers and these athletes, what's really, really cool, and we haven't discussed it yet, is the ability to attach royalties to
Yep.
these NFTs. And this is going to be very important for a lot of people outside the sporting industry, but also for the athletes as well as for some of the institutions. So think of the leagues,
Hmm.
um, and some of the associations. So I'll give you two examples. Um, First, I'll explain what the royalty is. When you sell an NFT, right? So say you're selling a digital trading card Floyd Mayweather, for example, stay on that topic, and you sell each card for $1,000. Okay, so now you have an individual trading card. Floyd Mayweather might come with some utility, but now you own this. You are now, remember, we said NFTs are very unique, so I can prove I own this individual trading card using blockchain technology to verify this,
Right.
right? Now, say down the road something happens. Floyd Mayweather becomes in the news a lot, or there's some sort of buzz, and that value goes up to $5,000. And I go ahead and I sell that, and I make 4,000 profit for me. That's great. It's easy to transfer, which is awesome. But the benefit for Floyd is if he attached a 10% royalty to that, he's now not only getting that $1,000 initially up front, that's kind of like your IPO, so like a stock,
Right.
right? When Apple first launches their stock, they go IPO. All of those funds come to Apple. But when Apple stock trades on the New York Stock Exchange and the other national exchanges, Apple does get none of that money. That's just like me and you selling to each other, Fred, right? There's
Yeah.
no royalties. With the
Right.
NFTs, Floyd Mayweather will get the initial $1,000 like the IPO, but if he attaches a 10% royalty, all secondary transactions, he gets 10% of every single one of those
Yeah.
transactions, right? So in the example, if he sells it for $5,000, 20% of that, or 10%, or whatever he decides his royalty will be, will go right to him. So a great example of how like a company or a league can do this. Why don't we just start with one of the biggest, and that's Nike. So Nike globally, athletic or non-athletic, has been one of the best firms at using NFT technologies to, build their brand awareness and connect with another generation in a very unique way. So, for example, they've made like 190 million in revenues off NFTs over the last few years. What is really interesting about that is only half of that was from the initial sale. So about 90 million was when they first launched their NFTs, sold them. The other 80 or 90 million came from all the secondary transactions that people were selling the original NFTs.
Right.
So Nike is consistently making money every time one of those NFTs trade hands, which is a very unique aspect, getting outside of sports, for example. And I think this is the example Mark Cuban gave, where imagine if you have a textbook company, right? Like, I don't know, I have a Cape One book right here, right? When they sell me this book for 200 bucks, they get my 200 bucks, that's it. When I use this textbook and I put it up online and I sell it, to get rid of it for someone
Right.
else, they get none of this money, right?
Right.
If they were selling to me this online as a digital copy, but I had to buy the NFT to get access to this book and I resold the NFT in the future, they can make 2 or 3 or 1 or 5% of
Yeah.
all of those sales.
Yep.
So the royalty component with the utility component we talked a bit about, they're very, very unique. And I think they, especially with all of the hoopla and craze that went into the whole phase and then the subsequent downturn, I think they're still getting lost, right? Because if you keep those utility, very, very strong, I think that regardless of what the market is doing, you'll still be able to generate interest in your project, right?
Right.
Before it was just people were making money doing basically nothing, right? And they were
Right.
starting projects and they had no, map, they had no time horizons, nothing they were going to do to the, their holders, and then those are the companies that essentially go bust. This is no different than what happened during the internet boom and bust of
Right.
the early 2000s. People were, creating websites and buying firms at crazy multiples, and 90% of them went out of business, right?
Right.
But that does not mean that the internet is no longer a
Right.
viable piece of technology, right? It's
Right.
just whenever you have one of those gold rushes, same thing in the cannabis industry. Once that became legal in Canada, everyone wanted in. They overextended themselves. Now they're all in debt. So it always happens. It's kind of, history repeats itself, right?
Yep.
You have that initial craze, things die off, and then it usually comes back stronger than it initially did. But that time horizon might take 10 or 20 years, to be
Yep.
honest.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So my question would be, does there have to be a utility? Well, I guess it doesn't have to be, but is there usually a utility that is tied to that NFT? And I'll give you an example. I hear about Gary Vaynerchuk and his V friends, right?
Yep.
His is like, okay, like they get X amount of dinners, or like annually it's a dinner with Gary Vee, for example.
Yep.
um and that's the reason why somebody could actually sell it. But if there is no utility that is attached to it, the resale value only is attached to that athlete becoming more popular. Possibly, is that accurate?
Possibly, yeah. Like for example, what gives a piece of art its value? That is very, very subjective.
Yep.
Someone could say the Mona Lisa is worth 1 million or 1 billion, right?
Right.
And who is to say it's in the eye of the beholder? It's
Yep.
frankly what someone will pay for it.
Right.
So that doesn't mean it's worthless. It
Right.
just means it's hard to value.
Yep.
So let's not confuse, a lack of clarity on the value with being worthless,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
so a trading card, yeah, the average trading card is worth $1 or $2. But if you have a Babe Ruth mint condition, graded 10, it's worth a lot of money. Now,
Right.
how much? That we don't know, but it's certainly worth more than a couple dollars,
Right.
right? So if an athlete or entertainer or frankly anyone has a NFT project that has no utility, it does not mean it's worthless.
Yep.
It just will be valued depending on what the buyer will pay for it and
Right.
frankly who that person is, right?
Yep.
If that, when one of these famous people passes away, just like some of the old musicians, right?
Yep.
All of a sudden, when Michael Jackson passed away, all of his memorabilia went through the roof.
Yep.
But there was a period of years and years. Yes, it was valuable, but
But
you had
it.
to wait for that moment, right? Now,
Right.
what is his, zipper jacket worth? I mean, that's so hard to quantify,
Right.
right? Um, Now, the thing with NFT would be if you were, say, there was like a barcode embedded on something like this that attached to the NFT. Like if you, Fred, were like, "Hey, I have Michael Jackson's zipper jacket. I'm going to sell this to you, Grant." The first thing that goes through my mind is this thing even real,
Right.
right? And how do I know that's not a knockoff? Because knockoffs are so prevalent in all aspects of life nowadays, right? So
Yep.
the NFT allows basically proof of ownership
Yep.
for any collectibles. If you're buying a Rolex watch, you're buying a Babe Ruth rookie card, or you're buying Michael Jackson's zipper jacket, proof of ownership is very important, right? So utility is great. Don't get me wrong, because that always, especially when it's ongoing. So we
Right.
were working with an athlete, for example, and they were doing a NFT project, and one of the many, many utilities that came with this NFT was basically part to be access to in one of his communities where he would do a monthly Zoom call. And this is a high-end NBA athlete. Every month will commit to going on Zoom with the purchasers of his NFT. Now it was limited to only 100, but imagine every single month,
Right.
like someone you followed, you got to do a Zoom call with him
Right.
every single month. So that in of itself is valuable. Now, if you wanted to go sell that, someone else would find that valuable because
Right.
of that ongoing utility. One utility, like a dinner with Floyd Mayweather, that's one thing. But once that's used up, that utility diminishes. It's no longer there because you've already used it. Now
Right.
all you have is the digital aspect, right? But
Right.
ongoing things, like that's where these um, Gary V or Full Send with their Meta card.
Yep.
These type of community projects where it's more membership based,
Right.
right? So yes, Gary V has utility where you can go to the event and this and that, but you also get access probably to a lot of his future projects.
Right.
So even if Fred, you had that NFT, you went to the dinner and then you were selling it to me and I didn't get the dinner, I probably might not pay as much for it, but I
Right.
still would give you something because I know that Gary's going to be doing something XYZ in the future, and I want to be a part of that. Same thing with the Full Send guys. They have a beverage called Happy Dad. It's basically a seltzer,
Yep.
and they want to be able to attach that to their NFT, where maybe even the holders share in profitability. Now that there's a lot of legality rules that go behind that, but like that's an example of how buying, their NFT project will allow you to potentially even, you know, be involved with a business venture of those individuals like Gary, like the guys from Full Send, right? So I think it's all about Fred just understanding what the person that creates the NFT wants to do.
Yep.
Do they want to be involved long term like Gary and the Full Send guys? Do they just want to do a short and sweet and raise money like Brandon Banks did for the local charity, right? There's a lot of ways you can do it. So like with M&G, the company that we have, the first thing we do is just ask clients a lot, like, why are they doing this? What do they want to get out of it? What is like the main purpose, right?
Yep.
Outside of making money. Um, And if they don't have a good answer to that, maybe it's a client we wouldn't take because everyone wants to make money. So I don't need
Right.
to hear about that, right? I need to hear about the other reasons you're going to want to do because I don't want to be involved in a project that,
Is a rug
sells
pull.
something for 200,000, it's a
Yep.
rug pull, and then all
Yep.
of a sudden, this guy's have a sour taste with not only the athlete but myself as well,
Right.
right? So it's all about just building an NFT project, educating the people about like the athletes about, the best ways to add value, really.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I know one of the things that a lot of people will probably ask about is, the barrier of entry. How hard or how, easy is it for an athlete to get to create an NFT and get into this space?
Short answer, very easy. The longer answer is depends on how much time they want to put in.
Gotcha.
You know, sometimes, as a financial advisor, we deal with people that are very involved with wanting to learn about their portfolios and learning about their investments and really want to get in the weeds and understand and put that energy into understanding how their wealth is managed. Then we have other people that say, talk to me once a year and let me know what my rate of return was, right? And that's why I'm paying you, Grant, to do this that I don't have to do.
Right.
It's the same thing, with an athlete, right? So there are companies like myself where you can pay us to do everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
We would use, and help you through the process on developing it. But then if they wanted to do it themselves, the great thing about living in 2022 is you are a YouTube or Google search away
Right.
from endless resources. If
Gotcha.
you want to learn about anything nowadays, there's basically no excuse to not at least know the high level tip of the iceberg. You
Yep.
might not be an expert, but if you want to know how to make lasagna or launch an NFT, it's really simple to learn,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now, we can help with that if clients don't want to put as much energy into it, but there are numerous resources on YouTube for people to learn about this space. The platforms, for example, like a Rarible or an OpenSea,
Yep.
when they first started, were a little cumbersome to actually understand how to do it and the gas fees associated, which is basically the cost
Yep.
to create an NFT for anyone that wouldn't know. It was a lot to understand, don't get me wrong. But these platforms have morphed over time. Think of like
Mhm.
what the first, ESPN website looked like, and now what it looks like to be able to access stats and standings and certain very unique metrics.
Right.
Now the interfaces are so easy, anyone can do it. My grandma can jump on for the first time and kind of figure her way around,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the very, very first one, oh my goodness, you would have had to have someone show you how to do it.
Right.
Same thing with the NFTs. So, you go on Rarible and OpenSea now and you look at that interface, it's completely different than 2 years ago,
Gotcha.
big time. And so it's becoming easier and easier and easier for the average person, athlete or non-athlete, to launch their own projects. But if they don't feel comfortable or they're a little timid, there are companies like mine and many, many others that are designed for that reason to help people from A to Z and hold their hand through the whole process.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so, what would be your recommendation for, like I said, some of these NIL athletes, and some tangible, projects or things that they can do to get started?
So this is going to be the whole, Mark Cuban, Gary Vee type of answer, but it's
Hmm.
basically don't do anything and spend 100 hours researching. Um, I would say the same thing about investing in a portfolio. You come to me with $1 million and you want to diversify the portfolio. First thing they want to know is should I buy Apple or Google or Tesla or Zoom? And I just say, what is a stock? And if you can't answer that question, you shouldn't be buying one, right?
Right,
You need to
right,
know its ownership in a company and so forth and,
right.
and all of that, right? Same thing with NFTs. A lot of people were buying, pictures of an ape smoking a cigarette and didn't
Yep.
know what they were getting, right?
Right,
And nothing wrong with that, but I would recommend people that want to get in the space spend a lot of time learning about it, educating themselves, talking with people in the space, jump on Discord. There are endless opportunities to learn. And then if you are investing and you are a purchaser, purchase what you're going to lose. And this is what we do with people when they first starting investing in stocks, like people just graduating out of school, right? That don't have a lot of money, they got 5,000, and they want to get involved. It's like, don't put all 5,000 to work right away. Put 500 in a couple
right,
stocks, and guess what? If you lose 500 bucks, it will not affect your life at all.
right,
If you have 5,000 in your bank account, don't spend all 5,000 on one NFT on a project you did zero research on and you don't even know what an NFT is. That
right.
is People do this all the time with stocks. They'll hear some story from
Yep.
someone in a cab, put all their life savings into something, and then be upset when they lose their money.
Yep.
This is unfortunately the world we live in where everyone wants to get rich quick.
Yep.
And we hear tons of stories of people getting rich quick,
Yep.
but I also hear tons of stories of people going broke quick.
Yep.
And you know, I think, to summarize, spend a lot of time, 50, 100 hours researching,
Yep.
understanding the technology. If you are investing, invest what you can lose. If you are creating it, um, think about how you're going to add value and why someone would want to buy your NFT, whether you're a musician, an athlete, or an average individual, right? Those would be the three things I'd recommend for people getting into space, depending on what side of the buyer or seller kind of spectrum they're on.
Yep, I think that's a big thing for like I said, when we're especially when we're talking about these college athletes, right? They have
Yep.
they have the time, they have the creativity. So I think that's probably a big way that they can learn about themselves and really do projects that speak to them and speak to their wants and needs, and making sure that they're tapping into their community. Because one of the things that I always look at is, in the past, they would be at that college for 4 years, and they would get used up, and then if they don't go pro, then they're done, right? But now they
Yep.
have an opportunity where they can leverage their community and become something that lives on, and they're actually able to monetize that nostalgia of being that quarterback from Oklahoma that didn't make it, versus just now I'm able to like actually do something like, oh, you get to have lunch with Sam Bradford or whoever it may be, and that's something that I think is invaluable.
I do as well, right? And as any market, whether it's the internet market or the NFT market, it goes through ebbs and flows. There's periods of time where there's tons of euphoria. People are throwing money at basically anything. They're making money. And this has to do with a lot with the price of cryptocurrency. So people that are watching that maybe don't know, like when they're buying NFTs, traditionally they're using cryptocurrencies like Ethereum or Bitcoin to purchase it. They're not using their Visa card or fiat currency like US dollars or Canadian dollars. Now that has changed. Some of these platforms allow you to use fiat currency, but for the majority of it, it's crypto. And as crypto markets go down, people have less crypto. They're less willing to spend on speculative assets
Mhm.
like NFTs that are more of a gamble, right? When, Bitcoin's at $60,000 and everyone is making tons of money, and, they're going to spend extra money on other things. So, I think a great way, and, for people to try to time the market, and people do this in other markets, right? When, you know, ever there is a boom and bust. This happens all the time. There's market cycles. You can research the hell out of this. It's to capitalize. When the market is down, that's when you strategize. That's when you do all your work and you get ready for it to turn around. Eventually it will. And when it turns around, you're ready, you're locked, you're loaded, you've done 100 hours of research, you have your team in place, you know the utility that you're going to be offering next school year, when you go to school in September, October, and you just sit and you wait for that time, right? and and you put a lot of thought into it, right? And whenever you think about it as if you were on the other side, like why would I want to buy my own NFT and what value does that have to me, both short term and long term? It really helps you to craft a better offering, right? So
Yep.
I think, yeah, maybe a person on a women's rugby team or a women's soccer team at one of these, D2 schools might not make a lot of money. And they certainly are not going to probably make 100 or 200,000 on an NFT, but could they
Right.
make 500, $1,000, selling a dinner,
Yep.
to,
Yep.
some guy that wants to go out with? Of course they could, right?
Yep.
And it's not going to change life, but I said, earlier in the call that especially with NIL, there are, I mean, you might know this, but just tens, if not hundreds of thousands of collegiate athletes across the country. And only few of them can garner, the type of money that the Luca Garces of the world can,
Right.
right? But for everyone else in the bottom 90%, um, I wouldn't think, oh, just don't look at it because, oh, I'm not Luca, I can't do this. Just
Yeah.
understand you might not make 100 grand, you might make 2 grand. And frankly,
Right.
unless you
That's
have a better way to make $2,000, then
yeah.
I'd recommend putting a little bit of time into
Yeah.
it.
Yep, a win is a win, right? And
Exactly. Yeah.
another thing about it is, like you just said, getting past the I'm not going to make 200 grand or something that to that nature. But in the past, the problem was is that either they had to sneak in and work
Yeah.
on during the summer or something like that, or they couldn't work, so they were struggling at their college in their college dorm because they're not one of the top sports. So now you have an opportunity where you can be creative and find a way that you can make an extra 2 grand or extra 4 grand or whatever it may be. And that's
Yeah.
just like, and also doing stuff that you probably were gonna do anyway. Like, hey, I like to bowl, so hey, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
an NFT to, hey, you get a one night to bowl with me a month. You come out with me and my friends, and you get to bowl. That's
Yeah.
something that you were going to do anyway, but now you were able to make a little bit of money off of it.
Yeah. For sure. I couldn't agree more.
Yep. And so I know we're coming up on our time. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with, before you go?
I would just say it's a really exciting time. This technology, everything from investing in crypto to learning about NFTs, how to buy them, how to sell them, it's a very, very exciting time.
Yep.
And if you listen to any of the Mark Cubans and the Gary V's, they'll say they haven't felt this way, probably in 10, 15, 20 years since when the internet first came out. This is just the beginning. I don't think that in 20 years the NFT market will look like it does today. I think it's going to be kind of like technology that's in the background.
Yep.
That just when you buy a certain thing online, you don't even know it. Like the
Yep.
skins from Fortnite, you
Yep.
don't even know you're buying the NFT. Like if you ask someone how does, the Visa checkout work when you go buy a Cineplex movie ticket, they have no clue. All they
Yep.
know is they push on a button, takes it from their Visa card, and they have a ticket.
Doesn't really
Um,
matter
I think that
how it's going to
NFTs,
look.
blockchain technology, that interaction will change a lot. So
Yep.
as the technology morphs, I would just recommend people continue to stay involved and understand that it's a natural course of any, market to go up and down, ebb and flow. Spend some time, have some fun, put a little bit of money to work that you're afraid to like not afraid to lose, and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Spend $50 on an NFT.
Yep.
That's nothing. Put Figure out how to open a wallet up, right? How to
Yep.
put the NFT, how do you transfer it? How do you buy cryptos to then even buy the NFT? What's an acceptable gas price to buy this? There is a huge learning curve, as we
Right.
discussed earlier, right? But that's why you got to put that 100 hours in,
Yep.
right? And so I would just say have fun with it, and it's here to stay.
All right. Well, thanks again, Grant. Let everybody know where to find you, and we'll be getting out of here.
Yeah, you can just Google me, Grant Laschowski, online, M&G Collections, Instagram, Google. I'm all over the place, so not hard to find.
All right. Well, thanks again. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next week.